So I once had a bee fly up my nose. Actually, twice. I had a bee fly up my nose. Once I had a bee fly in my ear. I've opened up a beehive wearing a skirt a few times. Skirt that came up above my knee. Once I opened up a beehive in my bathing suit. Twice I've lost a hive because it was knocked over. Once it was knocked over by a wild boar. And once it was knocked over by a cow that really had an itch it needed to scratch. And they actually survived. I just had to turn them back over. I have been keeping bees for about 12, 13 years. I've lost a lot of hives. I've lost beehives due to flat out something stupid that I did to cause them to collapse. I've seen strong hives collapse within hours after the neighbor next door sprayed their fruit trees. I've been stung more times than I can count. I've been stung so many times in one day that I felt like I was hit by a truck when I woke up the next morning. I stung somebody on purpose who said that venom therapy helped them deal with their Lyme disease. I've killed over 100 queens, mostly from working for a commercial apiary where they kill their queens every November, put a new one in. I really do love beekeeping in almost every way. I love the obscurity of it. I love the funny face people give you when you tell them you're a beekeeper. I love harvesting food from my backyard. I love making candles and body products from something I harvested. And I absolutely love opening up the hive. I love it when you get to this point when the bees know you, because they can recognize his faces. And you take the lid off and someone just look up at you and then they just turn around and walk away. I mean, they're never gonna be like, oh, hey, it's you, how are you doing? Because they're bees. They're not humans. But they know you, they remember you, and they're okay with you. You get to see a little baby bee hatching. And you're like, happy birthday, baby bee. Now get to work. If you're thinking about giving up or wondering if you should even try or getting a little tired of it, my advice to you is not to give up if you do really love it. Just change what you're doing so that it works. For me, that was moving 5,000 miles away and taking a non-paying internship in Hawaii. For you, it might be something different. There's a quote I love. It says, a beekeeper must be a bee lover in order to succeed. I made a picture with that quote. I took a photo a friend of mine had taken of a beekeeper out in the yard, the farm I worked for. Put the quote over on top of it and shared it on their Facebook page. It was really popular. It was shared over 100,000 times and had tons of likes. And one person commented. It was such an interesting comment. He said his father was a commercial beekeeper and was successful, but he did not love bees. And I thought about that for a second, because, I don't know which documentary it is, but there is a documentary about the bees, and they show some guy with his pollination services company, maybe Queen of the Sun, and he just seems like that money-hungry American that I think is stereotyped, and people around the world think is true. Not caring about the earth or the animals and just the money. And I said to him, there are a few ways to measure success. And if you are running a business, caring for an animal that you don't love, you might be making money, but you might not be successful. I don't consider that successful because you're not doing what you love. There's a quote by Nightingale. Never give up on a dream just because of the time it will take to accomplishment. The time will pass anyway. Good quote to say while doing this boring, monotonous task of building frames. There were times that I did want to give up, and I actually almost didn't become a beekeeper because I was getting really overwhelmed by the information. I didn't want to spend hundreds of dollars on a class, and then another couple $100 on the bees, and then another couple $100 on the hive. So I tried to just save as much as possible and just teach myself. And then I became overwhelmed by all this information. I loved learning about bees. I couldn't get enough of like the bee facts. But when it came to the beekeeping, I was just like, ugh. I almost gave up. The reason why I didn't was because I found Michael Bush's website. Practical Beekeeping, maybe I think it's called. I'm not sure. Never bought his book. I really should. It's just like a thank you. He called it lazy beekeeping. And he really simplified what the beekeeper does or what the beekeeper has to do. And without that simplification, I wouldn't have even gotten started. It's really important to find teachers that have a style that works for your personality and to find things that inspire you, to keep you going when you're getting just overwhelmed or thinking you're not good at it or just getting distracted by everything else you have to do in life. I usually recommend, Instagram accounts by people that you like. Or I love the documentary More Than Honey. I love Confessions of a Bad Beekeeper was a book that really helped me feel better after I lost my third hive, my second year in a row of losing all my bees. AJ, he has this email that someone recommended to me, and it was like Confessions of a Misfit, and it was so cute and just like made me feel better about deciding to take on a hobby that was a little obscure, deciding to move to Hawaii so that I could really figure out what to do and how to do it right. Even though people thought I was crazy, one of my friends said I was running away. My mother cried. I lost clients in my freelance design business because of it. But he made me feel better about it. He has this quote in one of his emails. I'm full of quotes today. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. That's a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote. I do really love Emerson. And then another quote by Seth Godin. The only thing worse than starting something and failing is not starting something. See if the bees have anything to say about that, if it's their life that's on the line, maybe. But if you love it, go for it. Try it. I know life's busy, but you make time for what's important. Getting into beekeeping with my friend Allie really helped to keep me going too. She also brought her 6-year-old daughter to our inspections, and it was just so much fun seeing everything through her eyes. And having that other person, that other accountability, the person to just, even though we both didn't know what we were talking about, having someone to just talk about those things with. What are we going to do? The comb fell off of the bar. It's so heavy. People told us to put a hair clip there, but the hair clip's not working. It was just nice to have somebody to talk things through with, even if they weren't so helpful in the problem solving. There's another fun quote. If a beekeeper tells you he knows what he's doing, keep a keen eye on this fellow, for he has already told you one lie and no doubt will tell you another. Stay away from beekeeping Facebook groups. Or you can post a picture, chit-chat with people. Don't take advice from people on those groups. And you're going to find beekeepers that you love and that you just click with immediately, and you're going to meet beekeepers that you find annoying from the moment, even before they even open their mouth. Some people talk as if how they do things is the way it should be. Some people are not open to new concepts, new gadgets. Let them be. You do not have to do things their way, and you don't have to talk to them. So when finding someone to shadow, you don't have to agree with everything that they do. You're just there to observe, to learn, to see what mistakes they're making so you know what not to do. And when it comes to finding a mentor, though, don't find somebody that's going to act like they know everything, because they don't. If somebody invited you to their house, you would not barge in without knocking. Pick stuff up and put it in other places because you thought it looked better. Tell them what to do. Tell them what's wrong with everything you see in their life, and then leave. So don't do that to your bees. My grandmother, God rest her soul, I loved her to death. She meant well, but she would do this. When she would come over, she would just telling me that I needed a haircut and my room was a mess, and she would move stuff around and she would clean up, and I couldn't find my stuff for weeks afterwards, and I didn't dare ask her what she did with it. You mean best. I know you mean well. When you open the hive and you move things around, you think you're helping them. You think you're making it better. But when you open a hive, most of the time, you should put things back where you found it. You should be respectful. You should put a little bit of smoke in the hive when you open the lid. If you open the lid and the bees are looking up at you and not going back down in the hive, they're flying up at you, then you put some smoke in the area. You calm the situation down. You do not want to just come barging in and wreaking havoc on the hive, because it's going to take a while for them to recover from that. And that is time that they would be otherwise gathering honey, caring for the brood, and helping the hive grow. Also, bees remember faces. So if you cause trouble in the hive, they are going to remember it, and they are going to relate this beekeeper with trouble. Which brings me on to my next point. Take off the gloves, but leave on the veil and the underwear. The best thing I ever did as a beekeeper was to take off my gloves. The first time I did it, I got stung 3 times on the hand within minutes. I put the gloves back on. At the time, I did very poorly when getting stung, so my hands swelled up very badly. Looked like a Mickey Mouse glove. I couldn't crack an egg the next morning. It was so bad. Once the swelling went down, I tried again, and I tried again and again and again. I eventually worked my way to having no gloves on during a full inspection, and then never wearing gloves. I still get stung on my hands. But one, my body's used to the venom, and I'm really good at getting the stinger out fast, so I don't swell up anymore. But also, this does 2 things. You are a much better beekeeper. You don't squish bees. You don't... when you have use of your fingers and you can feel things, you're just much better at what you need to do. Also, you are more vulnerable, so you will be so much more careful when you are putting a frame back in the hive, when your hands, your bare hands, are going in there with it. You do not want to squish bees, and you do not want to get stung. You can smell it and the bees can smell it, and you do not want them to relate the beekeeper with bees getting squished, bees stinging, alarm pheromones. You want them to look up at you and say, oh, it's that weird thingy-mabob again, and go back to doing what they're doing. But I have seen a coworker get stung on the eyeball. I have had a bee fly up my nose twice. I've had a bee fly in my ear. Wear a veil, even if you're doing something small. And just a side note for this silly story, one Valentine's Day, my husband and I were still dating. I had beehives on the property that he rented. And I said to him, before we go out to eat, can we just go move these 4 hives to the other guy's property? I was putting some literally 2 blocks away. And so he was sitting there after work in a t-shirt and board shorts, because we lived in Hawaii, so he wore board shorts all the time. Threw on a pair of jeans, and I gave him a jacket with a veil attached to it. That hive, we were moving just like 4 hives. That one hive was just really mad. And after we put it down and took I used to just wrap the hives in a mosquito net. I didn't have screens to put over the entrance to keep the bees from getting out, but allowing ventilation. So I would just wrap them in the net and then move them. So the bees came out of the hive, and they were mad, and they were really stinging us. And my husband bent over to get something. When he bent over, there was just this little gap in the elastic on his back, and a bunch of bees got in his jacket. They were crawling around in his jacket, and some went down into his pants, and like 3 stung him on the testicles. According to the pain index, where a man stung himself with honeybees all over his body, he said the testicles was the most painful, and second was the nostril. So I would say that the most painful place I've ever been stung was the nostril, and my husband was bent over in pain. I have never seen him in the 10 years I've known him, seen him react this way to pain. He was breathing heavily. He was having a hard time at moving. He said it was so painful. So wear underwear. Even if you're going to go out there to just do a quick inspection, no matter how calm your bees are, wear some underwear in case one gets up inside your suit. To this day, I still don't like beekeeping jackets because of that incident. About right before I moved to Hawaii, or decided to take the job in Hawaii, I was hit by a car. I was okay. It wasn't bad, but it could have been avoided. I was walking to an intersection, stop sign, and I was going to cross the street. I looked, and there was just one car coming down the street slowly, and it wasn't even halfway down the street, much less at the stop sign. So I started to walk. But something in me told me, you should wait. I don't think this person's going to stop at this stop sign. Me being me, I decided that I didn't have to wait for this person. It was my turn, and I wasn't going to wait. So I went, and I walked across the intersection. That car, very slowly, just drove right into me, and I landed on the hood of their car. I looked at them right in the eye, and they looked at me like I was a bug squashed on their windshield, like, gross. I got off their car, and they drove away. There was someone else crossing the street the other direction. They disappeared. People wonder why I left Philadelphia to go to Hawaii to be a beekeeper. I kind of was afraid. Living in the city was making me a little angry, to say the least. Sometimes there's this great book called Atomic Habits. It talks about that gut feeling, those little things that you pick up on that you're not even aware of sometimes. And so as a beekeeper, you're going to watch YouTube videos and read books and talk to people at clubs and wherever else you're getting information, assistance, mentorship. But when it comes down to it, when you open your hive, you are the only one there opening the hive. You are going to be the best person to decide what to do. So go with your gut over what people are telling you online and in books. My second year, we put the bees in the hive. The queens were in their cages, we hung them in, everything seemed fine. I just had a feeling that we should go check on the bees. I don't know why, I was just afraid that there was something wrong with the queen. She seemed fine, she was walking around in both of the hives, but everybody said check your bees 3 days later. Give them a few days, let them release the queen. So I did. When I opened up that one hive, the queen in the cage was dead. Fortunately, it wasn't too late. I called the place that I bought the bees from. They gave me another queen, and I picked her up the next morning. On a Sunday, the guy came outside of his house. He was like in his robe with a cup of coffee in his hands, and I met him in the driveway, and he handed me a queen in a cage. Thank you, Jim Bob. And I went and put it in the hive. Beekeeping is very time sensitive. You can make a lot of mistakes, but timing is very important. And so I put the queen in the hive, and she was released a few days later, and the hive went on to do well that summer. Speaking of which, there are lots of ways to get to know your bees other than inspecting them. You should learn more about bees from spending time with bees than spending time with humans. Sit outside your beehive. My second year with my bees, I had gotten 2 hives, and that year, for whatever reason, I decided to buy a mandolin and teach myself how to play it. After work, I would sit with my mandolin and strum next to my beehives. I got quite a few bees would fly into me, like right into my face. I wasn't even right next to the hive or in front of it, but when they're coming home, they are like a lot of people. When they're on their way home from work after a long day, they don't pay attention to anything else around them. And my neighbors would laugh at me. It was in a community garden on the roof of a parking garage connected to the apartment building I lived in. Other people had gardens there, and I looked pretty silly playing the mandolin for my beehives. But I learned a lot from hanging out with them. I saw the activity change over months. I saw them bringing back pollen, which means that they're feeding the developing bees, the brood. I saw them passing off nectar to each other at the entrance. I saw them stinging each other, which is a sign of robbing. Now, when you're trying to figure out what's wrong with your bees, it's a lot harder when you don't know what to compare it to. And some of that is just beekeeping over the years, but some of that is also just spending time with them. 12 years ago yesterday, I quit my job and moved to Hawaii to work for free for a bee farm. And today I am finally getting around to doing the task that I dislike the most as a beekeeper, assembling equipment. And I'm thinking about getting started all over again for the 3rd time. And all of those memories I have from when I first got my bees, when I first started in Hawaii, and I want to share them with you. This video is for anybody really, whether you're getting started or have been keeping bees for a while or just are curious and think it's cool and want to learn more about it. These are some of the lessons I've learned, and I'm trying to teach them by telling stories of my mistakes, so that you know that you are not alone when you make these mistakes. I've lost all of my bees 3 times. One of those times was 7 years into beekeeping, when I thought I knew what I was doing. I've lost beehives due to flat out something stupid that I did to cause them to collapse. I've had people think I was cool because I was a beekeeper, and I've had people flat out tell me that they think I'm weird because I'm a beekeeper. And I have seen hundreds of hives slimed out because of small hive beetle infestations. So to all the weird beekeepers out there, stay weird, have fun, and don't give up.